We'll be ready in a moment. It's just loading. Okay, we're good to go.
Have a good meeting, guys.
Thank you.
Hello,
Roland.
everyone.
Thank you, Roland.
Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Definitely,
Sherelle.
Sherelle.
Good evening.
Oh, good evening. So who do we have on the call? Dr. Meyer,
Yes.
Godfrey,
Yeah,
Azima.
For
Yes.
sure. How you doing, Sherelle?
I'm very well, thank you. Barbara Meyer Mitchell
Here.
and Miss Diana Carpio.
Here.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. So we'll call the meeting to order at 5:05 p.m. on April 28th. And Brenda, may I turn this over to you to get started?
Certainly. Thank you so much. We have
You're
an exciting evening this evening with several presentations related to curriculum and instruction and assessment and some of the exciting initiatives at Norwalk Public Schools. I have to just commend everyone for all of the hard work that they've been doing during our COVID emergency response. And while focusing on the needs of our children, have also been maintaining energy around several of our key projects and priorities. So they're going to be updating the board this evening on those projects. I think first on your agenda this evening is a presentation from Cranberry Elementary School on their Thinking Maps initiative.
awesome.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kristen Goldstein. I'm the very proud principal at Cranberry School, but I'm also joined by my site director.
Hi, my name is Michael Klein. Thank you for having me today, and I'm proud to share all the great things that are happening at Cranberry this year.
All right.
We're grateful to have you. Thank you both.
All right, so give me one moment. I'm going to share my screen with you so I can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
We'll see. It might get cut off a little bit. So we're going to share with you a little bit about the experience that we've had this year in piloting Thinking Maps at Cranberry School. Throughout this presentation, you're actually going to see some thinking maps that we use to share information for the presentation. You're going to see examples that the teachers have used, the children have used, and a few short videos along the way. And then we'll be happy to answer any questions for you. Oh, you know what? I have to change the view because it cuts it off. All right. So this slide, I know it's a little small right now. And I'm going to let Mike go ahead and share this piece with you.
So as Christie was talking about, one of the things that makes Cranberry unique this year is we were able to use Thinking Maps all around our building. We had in our staff meetings, we used them to help us plan throughout our curriculum and instruction. They were live in students' hands every single day, and it was exciting to see. So one of the things that we tried to infuse into this presentation are some of those maps. Right here is kind of the sequence of what we were doing. So we used a flow map, which when you think about how stories are told, it just kind of tells you the beginning, middle, and end. And this kind of goes through the introduction, the rationale, and it kind of gives you all the steps that we're going to try and accomplish today. Thank you.
So we're going to go to, sorry, my quick video.
Good evening. I'm Kristen Goldstein, and I am the very proud principal at Cranberry Elementary School. First, I'd like to thank all of you for giving us the time to speak with you this evening. This year, Cranberry embarked on a new journey. After looking at the needs of our students, the needs of our teachers, analyzing our performance data over the last few years, we recognized that we needed to make some significant changes. We needed to find a way to give our students the tools that they needed to become more successful thinkers, problem solvers, and decision makers. With Dr. Meyer's guidance and with the support of all of the district leadership, we were able to embark on a journey to pilot Thinking Maps this year. It has truly been a wonderful experience on the part of both our teachers and our students. We've learned a tremendous amount. This is our first year, and it does take a good year and a half or so to fully implement Thinking Maps, but we are off to an amazing start. We're going to share some of that with you this evening, and we can't wait to see where this journey takes us in the next few years. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to try and make this one a little bit bigger just so that you can see it. So what we're looking at here is really sort of cause and effect in terms of why Thinking Maps. Why did Cranberry Elementary take on this specific learning tool? What you'll see on the left are sort of the reasons that led us to this decision and sort of the outcomes on the right. So this is actually what we call a multi-flow map. So the thing about Thinking Maps is these are 8 very specific visual tools, and each tool aligns with a specific thinking process. So that's what is so important about Thinking Maps versus various graphic organizers. There are millions of graphic organizers that can be used for lots of different purposes. Where these are simple, there are 8 of them, and they are tied to a process. Students do all the heavy lifting of this. They're doing the creation once they understand the maps and start to use them on their own. There's access point for every student, regardless of their developmental level. Our kindergartners use them, our 5th graders use them, our EL students are able to use them, students with various special needs. It's a common language that we now have across the school. So regardless of what grade level you're in, what classroom you're in, if you talk to students and say we're going to do brainstorming, they know exactly what those next steps are and what the visual tools are they have to use. And it's explicit pathways. So again, you look at sort of the causes that lead to the effects on the right, where we are now. And again, students are deepening their thinking. We are starting to see the use of all of these maps across all settings in our school. You'll see them in our specials, along with our general education classrooms, every grade level. We're seeing it independently, especially now that we're in distance learning. And then you just sort of see that little conclusion at the bottom. All right, so this is these were maps we actually made in our first real planning session. So they're a little wrinkly there, but as you can see, these were actual maps that we created on the wall. We were brainstorming. So what you see here are circle maps, but it's like, we talked about what our school goals were for the year, the different initiatives that we already have going on, and the list of the programs that we use, because we wanted to see how everything would align.
Now here's going to be a quick little introduction video from me as well.
Oops, sorry.
Good evening. I am Michael Klein, the equally proud site director of Cranberry Elementary School. To the Board of Education members, school staff, and Norwalk community, thank you for your commitment to bringing in Thinking Maps to Cranberry. In terms of professional learning at Cranberry, Thinking Maps have had great reaching impacts throughout our building. Our teachers and students are equally excited about this tool because it makes learning connected and visual. Thinking Maps have gained tremendous traction at our school this year and in our staff meetings and grade level meetings, and most importantly, increased the performance of our students. Thinking Maps have engulfed our professional learning plan this year and been woven throughout all areas of how we've tried to improve at Cranberry. The professional learning this year has been during staff meetings, grade level meetings, it's been on-site and off-site, and even allowed us to develop our own Thinking Maps team at Cranberry. Our TOT team has been given some great teacher leadership opportunities this year, where they've even facilitated professional learning even after Jillian has departed. All in all, we are very excited about the impact that Thinking Maps are having, but most importantly is bringing our school community together and giving our students the tools they need to be successful. Thank you.
Sorry, it's not letting me move off of our slide. Give us 1 minute here. Sorry, we're in a little glitch. There we go.
So here we have a bridge map The nice part about a bridge map is it shows relationships. So one of the things that we wanted to be able to talk to you guys here is, here are the 8 different maps that we've been using. And it's not a disconnected tool from our curriculum. These are things that our teachers do every single day. In writing, we describe, at times we define, and very often we are comparing and contrasting. These bubble maps, double bubbles, and circle maps are integrated into our curriculum. They're not something different. They're not something separate. The interesting thing to me is when we had our initial kickoff meeting with Jillian, and she talked about how many different graphic organizers are out there. And when you do a quick Google search, at the time, it was about 2 to 3 million graphic organizers were available just on a quick Google search. And I'm sure it's increased more by now. But the nice thing about this is it streamlines the process for our kiddos. It makes it simple, and it's the same tool that they're going to use in kindergarten as it is in 5th grade. And we've seen great traction with it so far.
All right. So our first set of maps, we just want you to see some quick examples. This is when students are defining in context or brainstorming. You see the similarity across all 3 maps. This is a circle map. And again, just a couple examples. We've got a kindergarten class that was brainstorming and they're learning about the seasons of fall, to 4th graders that are learning about volcanoes, to our 5th graders that were learning about Antarctica.
Now here you've got some bubble maps, and I believe if I'm looking correctly over there on the right-hand side is a kindergarten example, and it was describing one of our actual kindergarten teachers, Miss Daly, and it describes her as beautiful, caring, and fun, which are all great adjectives to describe her. However, the best part is it allows, you can see right there is that you have kids work right in front of you. Kids are able to draw the bubbles. Most of the time with a little bit of adult support and prompting, you allow them to generate their own ideas. And the best part about these bubble maps is, holy cow, when you look at their writing, the adjectives and word choice that they have used, it has gone up tremendously. And over on the left-hand side there, you will notice we've got a 4th and 5th grade set there. And I believe this was actually from a special ed classroom. And the kids were able to do it with tremendous acquisition. So we were very excited to share those with you.
Okay, whoops, isn't it? The wrong way. We're having an issue here. I'm so sorry. So comparing and contrasting is our next thought process. So here you will see what's called a double bubble. So very similar, where you had one bubble in our past for describing. Now for comparing and contrast. Here you will see, for example, on the left for Polar Express, they were comparing and contrasting a book and a film. So you have to have a point and a counterpoint when you are comparing and contrasting. So it helps the students understand how to use this information to transfer that into their writing. When they're talking about similarities, differences, the information in the center of any of these maps, those are the things they have in common. So if you think about this, this is the most similar to something you might have seen, for example, using a Venn diagram. If you imagine those 2 big circles that we would use for a Venn diagram overlapping. However, a Venn diagram was actually never created for comparing and contrasting. It was sort of a force fit. So here you'll see how we use a double bubble for that purpose. Again, similarities and differences between Red Riding Hood and Lon Popo. And then we go into science with comparing and contrasting humans and bats. I'm so sorry. I'm not sure why it's having issues today. We were great earlier.
On this next one, here is where we were classifying main ideas and details. And this is where you will notice a few different tree maps, both as early as kindergarten and 1st grade with the digraphs over there with literacy, all the way to below it with math and how we broke up groups in classrooms. Over on the right-hand side, you have things like Thanksgiving feast and categorizing the different ingredients of a Thanksgiving meal, to some science activities in terms of sorting living and non-living things. So the best part to me is on these tree maps, it really lends itself to the informational writing. Kids were able to classify what they were talking about and then give examples of them below. For me, as a 4th and 5th grade teacher previously, I really love this because it allowed me to even weave it in with my own personal children at home, because it helps you elaborate your thinking. It helps you gain that traction with kids, because it allows you to elaborate where you're trying to add in some of those details. And it definitely makes it a heck of a lot more visual for kids, which they really enjoyed.
So the next thought process is sequencing. And again, you saw this earlier when we first stepped into this presentation with this type of map. This is a flow map. It's something that people are more familiar with when coming into looking at the different thinking maps. Here you'll see on the far, these examples were done by teachers in their teaching. So we have a STEM flow map on the left. That was from one of our gifted and talented classrooms as they were getting ready to work on their STEM projects. You'll see in the center an example of how they would use that for writing an informational report, and then how to use it to retell a story. We have children that have been using sequencing maps all year long. And I think one of the places where we saw quite a bit of traction was with our older students trying to solve their math exemplars and trying to break down a problem and understand the process that they had to go through in order to solve those problems. And oftentimes we'll walk into classrooms now and see children using the sequencing map or the flow map in order to do that.
Now here is a cause and effect one, which we used very often in writing and reading. On the left-hand side, you'll notice a few student artifacts, and then on the right-hand side, a teacher model as well. But to me, one of the biggest uses of this that Christie and I tended to go to is even with problem-solving incidents in school too. We allowed students to kind of think through their patterns and what happened in behavior situations and kind of troubleshoot to allow them to see how their actions had direct impacts to where they wanted to be able to get to. So giving kids kind of that problem and solution idea with how you can get there and what are all those different impacts and effects it can have, had a tangible resolution with how our kids handled situations at school as well.
And something you'll notice on these maps, when you go beyond just the creation of the map and putting the information on the map, students have to learn to draw conclusions. You'll start to see those at the bottom of the map. They have to cite their sources. Those might be the page numbers in green or little sentences in green. So it's more than just putting the ideas on the map. It's being able to go back and draw the conclusions and cite your evidence. Here, you'll see what's called part to whole. These are examples of a brace map. The one that you'll see on the left is for place value. That's something that a teacher actually used in teaching this in distance learning. The one next to it is a picture of a map that a student sent back to show that they understood parts to whole in place value. On the right, you will see it was parts of a snowman. So this was a first grade lesson over on the right. The maps that you see now, we certainly use, but these are new. So we didn't actually get to the instruction of these until we were leaving for distance learning. So the students are learning these now.
And the same holds true about the bridge map here, which is about analogies. You'll notice on the left, it was a introduction on a kindergarten source, and talks about colors with different fruits. So you see how it says green and grapes and then blue and blueberries, and it continues to kind of reinforce tangible objects that kids are aware of. And over on the right-hand side, we went into science as well with these brace maps, looking at how it impacts natural disasters as well.
All right, so we have this is one of our first grade teachers. She made you another short video. Uh-oh. Let's see if it's going to play for us.
based on the number of maps that have been posted on Dojo recently, we've done brace maps and bridge maps in my first grade class. And I find it amazing how many kids have actually done the work and posted the work. And this tells me they are enjoying it. And for first graders, I think that's the first step. If they're willing to do this at home, then they're liking it. And that's a great stepping stone for future work.
All right, so here I know that these are a little bit small, but we just wanted to show some different examples of the maps, and these are created by students. We'll see this, whether it's, we're going to show you some other pictures in a few minutes, but in their notebooks, as they are thinking about a story they're going to write, as they're trying to organize information that they have learned in a science lesson, even if they're trying to persuade. I've had many of them given to me of reasons why we should have longer outdoor recess, or why we should change the schedule of our day. They're using these maps to try and really bring home points and explain things to us to demonstrate their thinking. And it's not just about using a single map, it's how one map may lead us into the next map for the next purpose of our learning. Okay, here's another short video. This is a teacher and parent.
Hi, my name is Erin Daly. I'm a kindergarten teacher at Cranberry. I'm also on the TOG team. Thinking Maps have been a great resource for me to use in my classroom this year to meet the needs of all students. It also has been a great resource for my students to use in their learning as well. Thinking Maps show students who are learning at different levels and have different learning styles, different ways to organize their thoughts and ideas. They let students show me their thought process. It also helps in development of problem-solving skills and deepening students' understanding in content areas. I have been able to see Thinking Maps as a parent. Both my boys attend Cranberry, and they both have used it home on the weekends. My older son, who's in 3rd grade, used a flow map to show me how he wanted a play date. My younger son was reading a book on mythology, and it talked about Roman and Greek mythology. And he said to me, "Mom, we can use a double bubble to compare Greek and Roman mythology." It was pretty neat to see them apply what they were learning in school outside of school. I just think Thinking Maps are a great tool for teachers and students. Thank you.
One thing I will share here is, as she was explaining to you, one of her children came to her after they were reading these stories and said, "Mom, I think we should use a double bubble to compare and contrast the mythology." That was a 1st grader.
And again, here are just some more artifacts of our kids excited about the work from our distant learning as well. And it's great work. We see it coming in all the time. It's getting posted on Dojo. It's getting posted on Google Classroom. And our kids are doing a great job with it.
Christy and Michael, I'm going to stop you there for just a minute. You've done a beautiful job of outlining for us kind of the power of Thinking Maps as an instructional tool. You can see the power for students who are ELs, special need, children who have range of learning styles, and the visual nature of the maps helps everybody so that they not only can be collaborative, but it also helps with the retention and support of their thinking. So those pieces have been laid out so beautifully. I'm going to stop for just a minute and see if any of our board members have questions about the use of Thinking Maps.
I don't have a question about the Thinking Maps. Although I think, reading the background information on the brain-based research as to why we're taking this approach, it definitely is a very exciting, much more understandable having read that research, to understand that we're trying to cement and encode learning through these processes. And I really appreciate the work you've done to integrate it into your curriculum. I do have a question which is completely unrelated, which is, what is Second Step? It was listed as one of the initiatives, and we haven't been briefed on that.
That is a social emotional learning curriculum.
Got it.
And just as when we did our SEL board presentation earlier this year, you might remember that there was a presentation by Silvermine, and they're also using Second Step, and they specifically chose it because it's in 2 languages as their character curriculum.
Is that, and that's separate from Kickboard?
That is separate from Kickboard.
Okay, thank you.
So again, you just see some kids around the rooms in our classrooms using thinking maps in their writing, in their research. It's been incredible.
One of the pieces that I know the board may be interested in, we're very excited that Cranberry Elementary School is slated for a new construction project. And I know as facilities were thinking about that, they've been very busy thinking about the kind of core identity of a brand new building going forward. And they're working with their SGC on a couple of those different ideas. But thinking maps, the beauty of this becomes an underpinning of practice, no matter which direction that the building goes in as they kind of foster their identity. I don't know, Christie, if you'd like to just give the board a little idea of some things you're thinking about as you move forward with new construction.
Certainly. Well, I think it maybe Mike and I will both share. One of our ideas, the first is about sustainability and looking at environmental sustainability or a green school. How do we make sure that we are teaching our students how to be responsible, environmentally responsible, how to take a look at a building and what can we include, sorry, I'm moving some things around here, in our curriculum and in our environment that would talk to that sustainability. We are looking at global leadership as our second sort of identity, one of those 2 choices. And Mike, do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think we all recognize the importance of leadership in this community, especially where we are today with this pandemic and how we've had to change the way that we conduct business. But I also know that as a world, we are a growing, more diverse, more eclectic community. And as the world gets smaller, it also gets more intertwined, that we have to be connected. And the more that we think about global leadership, it involves a multitude of different facets, from language to economics to thinking about how we treat others as well. So there's that social emotional piece tied in that we are considering in terms of facilities, in terms of building, in terms of equipment, in terms of even programs and structures tied to our curriculum as well. So we've been toying back and forth and listening to our teachers, our staff, our stakeholders, and our students to get input as well.
And we've had a lot of interest from the teachers in both areas, really when looking at what are the benefits for our students. I think when we look at one, where is our school located? And what are the benefits we have from having a park in our backyard and the opportunities that are available to us there. But we also have a growing diverse community, and we have families from different areas of Norwalk, but families from around the world, and trying to sort of honor the community that we are at this point.
I appreciate that very much. I just know the board would be interested because that will be coming up in some future facility planning conversations.
Can I just do a follow-up question on that?
Sure.
We saw in the facilities committee that the plan did not include an art, music, or science room as it originally did in its first draft. Was that an oversight, and have we corrected that?
That was an oversight in the planning. We've actually done some conversations now looking at enrollment, looking at what the needs of the building would be. So we are still really in the throes of that design. And then we want to be able to also give it that 10% heat map, which is around the identity, to make sure if there's any special features that we need. So that we certainly know that needs to come forward to the board in May.
Great, thank you.
Well, I appreciate the time, guys, and the story of Thinking Maps is a beautiful story. I'm one of those positions where I need to kind of keep the time moving, and so thank you very much. Well done and a great celebration. And you know what's one of those things when you have a great plan like Thinking Maps, I love how it helped to accelerate our distance learning plan as well, and how the maps went right with children into that distance learning environment. That shows that you really have a strategy in place that's kind of ubiquitous, right? Works in multiple environments. Lovely.
Can I ask?
Go ahead, Barbara.
Two questions. One is, you know, just as when we had the presentation about Tracy School, there was a feeling from the board that we wanted more SEL at all of our schools. Is there an opportunity for us to implement some of this thinking into our other buildings? Obviously not to the extent maybe that this building has done, but is that a possibility?
And one of the things we're always looking for is that to make our featured schools PD schools. So I know you're going to have a presentation about Quad D, and they're our first model for a lab school where teachers can come and learn. We will, as we get more developed next year with Thinking Maps, look at it as a PD opportunity where you do a fellowship, which is what we know about learning, where you can come into a classroom, see the practice, then go back and try the practice in your own classroom. So we're really starting to build out these laboratory PD environments that teachers will be able to work in. You know, we think about mid-career teachers specifically. They really want to see it engaged in a classroom, and then they want support as they practice it in their own environment. So we're building that in this and in several other examples in Norwalk.
Can I just say one thing to that? It has been integral to what we have been doing, the professional development and the support that we have had. Our consultant this year, her name is Jillian Shaken, and I know Mike had mentioned her a few times, but the amount of time that she has been able to come in during our first year to help support our teachers and to help build our base team, I just can't imagine where we would be without it. So it has really been a wonderful experience, and all of our teachers really jumped on board very quickly and became excited about it.
And not to interrupt too much, but she's also going to do a workshop even for our parents next Tuesday, and I'm going to send out the invitation to all of our parents as well today. But I welcome you guys as the board to also attend.
Thank
it's going
you.
to be virtual.
Brenda, one last question. Is this presentation separate from, I thought we were going to have a presentation of the consultant's findings regarding their work in Cranberry? Is that a separate?
Yes, that's a separate one. At your June work session, Mass Insight will be joining us, and we'll be very excited. Michael and Christie have been kind enough to join us again, and they'll be talking you through their school improvement process this year. So we're looking forward to that as well.
I'm so sorry that you won't have the opportunity of the testing cycle to celebrate all the work you've done and what the results might look like, but I definitely want you to know that we're celebrating your hard work anyway. Regardless of scores, we can see what's happening with the kids, and it's doing great work.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. I'm going to turn it over to James Crouch and have him introduce the project for Brookside.
Thank you, Brenda. I appreciate it. And honestly, this is my first time ever presenting to the board. So tonight I feel like a musical artist who finally got invited to the Grammys. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right. And I'm fortunate enough tonight to present with two special people, Mr. Tim Nee, who's the director of the Training Center of Montessori in Hartford. And he's the only guy I ever met who can work in Connecticut but live in Spain. So Tim, I'll let you explain that story because I'm not even going to touch that. And then also presenting me tonight is Sandra Fayos, who's not only a wonderful part of central office now, but she is the former principal of Brookside. She's been so supportive to me throughout the school year, and I appreciate them both being here. So let me share my screen, And I promise that I will be short because I did have a lot of information I wanted to share about the Montessori program. But I know that we are strapped for time, and I may have to modify my program a little bit. But let me start just with a quote from Dr. Maria Montessori that basically sums up the Montessori experience. And the quote is, "The greatest sign of success for a teacher is the ability to say the children are working as if I did not exist." You see, our job as educators is to develop independent thinkers, children who are able to make logical decisions based on their own intuition. The Montessori philosophy is founded on this principle. Every student learns differently and at their own pace. See, this is the future wave of education. And at Brookside, we have loaded the rocket and we are blasting off into another trajectory. I was extremely fortunate enough to inherit this program from Sandra, and just watching 32 3- and 4-year-olds grow and develop at a high level has been an extraordinary experience. So I cannot take all the credit because the foundation was already established. But I just want to say thank you to Tim and thank you to Sandra.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry to interrupt, Jim. You're doing great. Roland, can you please check? It looks like Sherelle had fallen off the call and is trying to reconnect. Can you please assist her since she's the chair?
And James, is your screen supposed to be blank right now?
Is my screen blank? You can't see my share?
No.
It's blank, so I just wanted, but I did not want to interrupt you while you were doing your intro.
I thought it was deep. You know?
It was deep.
Right.
It was
Blank
deep.
canvas to connect our thoughts.
It was poetic.
Yes.
I don't know why you can't see my screen.
Oh, you're back now?
I think you were on the whiteboard for a moment, James, and you might want to.
What about now? Can you see now?
It's just a blank white screen right now.
Christie, I don't know what's going on tonight.
James, is it the same presentation that was in the email from Luce Berkland? All right,
Yes,
I'm gonna
it is.
grab it. Let me grab it and see if I can share it, all right?
Thanks, Scott.
It's showing up on mine, but it says
You're on whiteboard, I think, James. And so if you go back to stop, if you go to stop share,
okay.
Then go back to your share screen, and then you should be able to see your PowerPoint somewhere there.
You're still on whiteboard, Tim.
Because you're on whiteboard, so you have to get out of whiteboard. So do stop share. Make sure you're doing stop share.
I did. I stopped this.
There we go.
No, that's not the one.
That's not it.
Not it.
Mm-mm.
And is your PowerPoint on your desktop, Jay?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So it should be there then.
Oh, right here. Hold on. Okay. Hold on.
Yeah.
Are we good?
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Great.
So, son. So, Sandra, can you talk about this slide, please?
Yeah, I can. Thank you so much. Let me make sure now. I had started to try to share mine, but thank you so much. I want to first thank Sherelle, Godfrey, Barbara, Diana, and Brenda for your leadership during these times, because you guys have been relentless. You have been working hard. And I think it's definitely in keeping with the staff for NPS. And I really appreciate your leadership. So thank you guys for having me. And thank you, James, for your dynamic introduction. It's hard to beat James when he speaks. I always want to go first, which is why I'm going first now. But so let me just provide you, if you would humor me, with a little bit of background as to how it is that we even got here. Barbara might have been there, but I think that everybody else was not there for this piece, which is we had a presentation to the board on a feasibility study that was conducted by Craig Montessori Training Center Northeast. Tim Nee was the presenter. And this feasibility study, which was published in March, basically took a look at Jefferson, Wolf Pit, and Brookside as possible sites for a Montessori school within a school, or a strand within a school. And from that study, because of the space and the future potential for expansion, Brookside was chosen. And I was really delighted because although I'm not a Montessorian and knew very little about it, I knew just from reading and from the draw that other people had to Montessori programs that this was really something that was going to be treasured by the Brookside community. So it was chosen. There's a feasibility study that goes out for several years that can provide us guidance on the class sizes. We started with 32 seats. We started with 3 and 4-year-olds. We're adding another set of 3-year-olds this year. James will talk about that in a little bit. And just so that you understand the magnitude of this program is we had a lottery. The lottery is only open to Brookside families because it is right now just a strand, a school within a school. We had a lottery for these 32 seats. We filled the 32 seats and still had 85 people on a wait list. So that first year and that level of interest at these parent meetings was just overwhelming. And I think James will echo that with this year's lottery also. So we began planning. Dr. Myers was part of that planning. The curriculum office, Tim Nee was part of that planning. We hired a lead Montessori teacher. We hired a CISD that had been also working in a Montessori program. And that summer, we were able to get the project done as far as facilities goes. There was a lot of facilities and space improvements that needed to be met in order for us to actually be able to have the program. We did it over the summer, and then we were able to open the program fall of 2019. And this is where James now comes in and his leadership takes over. I was there for the prep, and then he was there for the first day.
It was an extraordinary day. I can tell you, just the Montessori program as a whole has been phenomenal. If you just think about the standard of AM9 Montessori, in the Montessori world, there's 2 different curriculum to follow. It's AMI, which stands for Association Montessori International. And then you have AMS for American Montessori Society. Norwalk Public Schools, we chose AMI because it emulates the true philosophy of Dr. Maria Montessori. The program is authentic. It maintains a high level of precision. Every lesson, every routine, every material placed in the classroom, it has a purpose to develop an adolescent at its stage. In each classroom, you have an AMI trained guide, which means that they're certified by completing a rigorous training program. And please don't confuse, because they're not called teachers in Montessori, they're called guides. And the classroom is formed by age appropriate instead of grade levels. So a primary classroom consists of 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and 5. Lower elementary is 6, 7, and 8. And upper elementary students range from 9 to 12 years old. And this builds a strong sense of community to where children, they learn from each other. You talk about the first plane of a child. This is the critical part of developing the brain of an adolescent. This is the time where a child is like a sponge and absorbs a plethora of background knowledge that will basically impact their future learning capacity. This is why we read to our children when they are toddlers, but we start to encourage them to read on their own when they turn 3 and 4. We try to expose them to as many words as possible, and they're inspired to read based on the fact they want to be independent. The primary classroom emulates a lot of these components. We want our students to explore many different materials in the classroom and make a choice to which activity they want to engage. A whole group lesson in reading, writing, and math, it does not exist in this model. The child decides what they want to do and obsessively develop the skills necessary to read, write, and count with fidelity. Now we're talking about the superpowers, and this is the birth. The materials are essential in the Montessori program because they promote hands-on and active engagement. They follow a sequence where foundational skills are learned. You will see materials like binomial cubes, number rods, sound cylinders, and the pink tower. And you think that all of these materials are fun, they look like toys, but they have a specific purpose that range from measuring and comparing, enhancing sensorial skills, and interacting with the environment. This is the difference between teaching a basic algorithm to a toddler, like 2 + 2 = 4, to having a child use string beads and have the ability to skip count by 5 and 10 at 3 years old. And I'm telling you right now, at Brookside, we are doing everything possible to enhance our students' superpowers. And we are trying to create the next version of the Avengers.
It's a great goal.
Areas of the primary classroom. So you have your language, which concentrates on the essentials: reading, writing, and synthesizing. You have your math concepts, right? Addition, subtraction, and number recognition. But what really separates the Montessori program from a traditional classroom is the sensorial and practical life component. Both of these areas maintain a focus and is having a child learn and interact with their environment. Sensorial activities, they're designed to cover every quality that interact with their senses, right? They learn about weight, size, texture, and temperature through engagement exercising, not from a lecture and not from a picture book. The practical life, this is the true foundation of the environment and it builds a sense of community. This is where a child learns how to take care of the environment inside and outside of the classroom. So you may walk into the classroom and you'll see a child pouring a cup of orange juice from a glass pitcher, planting a flower outside in the garden, preparing the table to eat with their peers at lunch, and even raking leaves in the courtyard. And someone may ask, how would these activities really contribute to a child developing academically? And I'll tell you that these routines contribute because they control and coordination of movement, the development of concentration, and even building a child's self-esteem. So this is why it's very important for the practical life component of Montessori. You have the Montessori Continuum. Now, we already just talked about the child's playing and how important it is to access the brain of an adolescent at this crucial time period. Within the continuum, children are placed in a multi-age classroom where they can learn from each other. The 5-year-old students, they take pride in teaching and modeling for the 3-year-olds. While the 4-year-old, they're observing the leadership skills and preparation, so when it's time for them to be the leaders of the class. This is looping at its highest level. The children become a family. They take care of each other and they sincerely care for one another. The teacher also has a personal relationship with the families because they are in sync for 3 consecutive years. Every parent who currently has a student in a Montessori has shown interest in enrolling their younger sibling in the program. And hopefully this enthusiasm will continue as we advance the program. Now, Mr. Tim Nee will speak about the professional support.
Good evening, everybody. Happy to be here with you all, and certainly a pleasure to work with Sandra and James. And James, really, you need to come to the training center and sell our program up in Hartford.
Not yet, Tim. Give me some time.
But I am the managing director of the Montessori Training Center Northeast, and for those of you that were on the board before, presented on the feasibility study for Montessori at Norwalk Public Schools. So we worked with the school district in helping them with some of the marketing, with getting open for that first day. But since the school has opened, as Sandra described and James is describing, we've been providing weekly consulting work. Lori Campaformio, who you see pictured in the center of this picture with Sandra and James, has been the main consultant working directly with teachers. She's in the building twice a month, working with teachers, coming in, being with the teachers, providing guidance as the students are getting started, solving problems, working with James, working with Sandra, providing information to them as needed. She's also developed the Professional Development Day workshops and worked with James and the teaching staff to do those. We've been providing, myself, I've been working with James and with Sandra and looking at mentoring along the Montessori lines in the school itself. We were working on some feedback forms for observation. We'll continue to do that, working with strategic planning and really just trying to provide the Montessori expertise in the school from our training center here in Hartford, which is an Association Montessori International Training Center, as James described, AMI. We also helped with the open house for this new enrollment that's coming in through the lottery and registration that James indicated and Sandra had talked about. Our trainer, Gretchen Hall, came to Brookside to meet with the parents and provide an overview of what a Montessori program would look like. So that's a little bit of some of the support we've been providing this year to Norwalk Public Schools, particularly Brookside Montessori.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank
And
you.
Just to piggyback off that, Tim and Lori have been instrumental in helping my progression when it comes to Montessori and just learning about the program. And Lori and I, we have a wonderful relationship to where we do walkthroughs, and she shows and tells me exactly what I need to look for when I go into a Montessori classroom. So I just appreciate all the help, Tim, that you provided me this school year.
Our pleasure.
Program highlights. Now, honestly, I don't even know where to begin when it comes to stating the program highlights. Just the mere fact that we are 1 in 5 schools in the entire state to have a public Montessori classroom in the building is an extraordinary accomplishment. When I think about the perception of Montessori schools and how it's geared towards affluent children and communities, to allow my children the opportunity to engage in the program, which promotes independence and assists students in developing their extemporaneous skills, is truly a blessing. And I feel so honored to be the building leader. It's such a pleasure just to have the opportunity to walk into the classroom. You could just feel the difference when you walk through the doors, to see 16 3- and 4-year-olds sitting together, having a family-style lunch with 2 waiters serving their peers rice and chicken and vegetables, and setting the table with silverware. It's absolutely mind-boggling. The Montessori program has definitely taught me a valuable lesson, and that is, do not underestimate the ability of an adolescent. With the proper instruction and modeling, children will do exactly what you tell them to do. Their purpose is to make adults happy, and they take pride in completing that task. Now, since we've been on distance learning, it's been a little bit difficult based on the fact it's more complicated for students in the Montessori program. Each student basically has an individualized plan and is based on student choice. So a teacher has to recommend activities to the parent to keep the child interested on a daily basis. They don't have the classroom materials in their homes, so we have to be creative and use other materials. Students were provided school supplies before we left for distance learning. They are able to choose between activity books, practical life work, or even sensorial activities. The Montessori guides, they have prepared recorded lessons and read alouds with parents, which allow them to participate in the lessons as well. The guides are touching base with parents through Zoom conferencing, daily phone calls, and even class dojo. And as we transition to phase 5 and 6 of remote learning, we are preparing a packet for the students who may experience the digital divide and may not have a device. The lottery selection. Now, this was an extremely difficult process for me because I had to tell 30 families that they would not have the opportunity to attend this phenomenal program, and it was very disheartening. So we are expanding the program to 48 students this year instead of 32. 16 additional 3-year-old students will be added for the 2021 school year, which means that we will place 8 students in each classroom, which will give us a total of 24 instead of 16. We had 16 available slots for the program, and 15 out of the 16 were awarded to families who had sibling preference. So on April 3rd, we had a Zoom lottery for the last available slot, and I sent acceptance letters and waitlist letters to parents via email the following Monday, which was April 6th. So currently, we do have 30 students who are on the wait list. So for personal and unfortunate reasons, the guides who started the school year will not return in 2021. We are in the process of hiring 2 highly qualified AMI guides. Currently, we have 27 candidates have applied for the new positions, and we have high hopes that with the assistance of Tim and the graduating cohort from the training center, we will have 2 exceptional guides to begin the 2021 school year. The 2 current primary assistants, which you may consider paraprofessionals, will remain in the program to provide consistency. Also, we are in the process of hiring 2 guides for the lower elementary classroom that will be implemented in the 21-22 school year. So not next year, but the following year, when those 5-year-olds become 6, you have to have a place for them to go, and that will be the lower elementary class. Now, Tim will talk about the continued Montessori professional support.
So we're very fortunate to continue to work with Brookside and with James and Sandra and the staff there. So we will work with James and central office and Javier and others to look at the hiring staff, providing some expertise in that area as far as Montessori background and making sure that people that are hired for the guides have the proper training. Right now, we do have leadership. Jennifer is going through leadership training right now. As I alluded to earlier, we've been doing mentor work with James and providing some assistance in the school as far as understanding Montessori for the staff. The teacher and assistant training is something that we offer all the time. And so we're looking at different ways that we can involve Norwalk folks that want to become Montessori teachers and then return to Norwalk Public Schools or enter into Norwalk Public School at Brookside to become a teacher. We'll continue with the consulting and coaching work next year that Lori's been doing and continuing with the leadership mentoring. We also are looking at different observation tools for teacher evaluation, for program evaluation, for providing feedback to staff and to the teachers, as well as continuing with PD planning and workshops for next year. And as we start moving forward into the elementary phase, looking at curriculum and assessment alignment so that we can take a look at Common Core, take a look at state requirements, take a look at Norwalk curriculum, and see how that aligns with the Montessori curriculum and be able to have that kind of side-by-side comparison.
Thank you, Tim. And as Tim alluded to, the leadership capacity, Ms. Jennifer Delaney, who's the CISD at Brookside, she is currently enrolled in a Montessori training program, and I plan on taking a similar course through the summer session. Future of the program, Sandra?
Thank you. Let me get my notes up. So just so that you have some sense of how the program is being built out, for this upcoming year, we're going to be adding the 3-year-olds, but there's no additional cost to the program because those upfront costs have already been paid. For the following year, when we start the lower elementary, we will be adding 1 lower elementary classroom that will have all of your 6-year-olds together. The year after that, you will separate into 2 lower elementary classrooms. That's why it's important that we're securing those teachers now so that we can actually have them on hand for when the program begins. And we actually have secured those teachers. We're in the process of negotiating with them for them to actually come on board. So the year after that, there will be some costs to the district. We already have in the budget $50,000 for 21-22 and $50,000 for 22-23 to help with, not in the budget, I apologize. We had already put that into the feasibility study, and in the financial plan, there was that startup funding that was taken into account. And then after that, we will have to talk about the additional funds that it will take to outfit those classrooms at Brookside. So even though Brookside has the space to have this strand of this program within the school, the classrooms as they are, they have the space, but they will have to be outfitted to actually be Montessori classrooms. So there's some of those things that we will have to consider, that the board will have to consider as we move on with the program. There will be a per pupil that is going to be determined by Tom and his team. Right now, we're reconciling that the per pupil may be more, but it may not be, because as we are absorbing some of those Brookside students, then that means that the traditional Brookside classrooms will diminish. So instead of 4 sections of 3rd grade, there will be 1 fewer section because those students are electing to stay in the Montessori program. So there's a little bit of that balancing that we're trying to project out, and Kristen and Tom are actually working on that right now. The classrooms for Montessori are actually larger it's between 28 and 32 students. So that per pupil also needs to be adjusted according to that number. And then things like furniture and materials and those other expenditures are part of the plan also. And then, you know, any questions that you guys have regarding the future of the program, I'm able to then go back to the team and try to get you some responses.
Thank you, Sandra.
Mm-hmm.
So before we take any questions, I just want to say thank you very much to Dr. Myers and the Board of Education for allowing me to present tonight. If I had had the knowledge now, when my daughters were young, and I could have put them in a program like the one at Brookside, I would do it without any hesitation. I'm sold on the Montessori program. And I had zero knowledge before I stepped foot inside of Brookside. But looking at that observation window and watching those kids just develop for 8 months, it's been truly an honor. And I just say thank you very much.
Thank you so much, guys. Such an exciting body of work, you know, right from the ground up, and such a strong vision for Brookside. Do the board members have any questions for us?
Can anyone hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
you're
you
on.
can.
Oh, I wasn't sure. It was, you guys were so exciting. I had to come off the phone and go on the video. So I just have to say, I don't know enough. I'll be honest. I don't know enough about it to ask a lot of questions, but it sounds so exciting. I love the quote about, you know, children learning, you know, as if the teacher didn't exist. It sounds like we're putting a lot into this, and I'm really happy to hear that we're going to outfit the classrooms, because the things that I do know is that Maria was true to the fidelity, and most people who come on board who are sold on the model, they're also very true, you know, to the model. So I'm really happy to hear that we will outfit the classrooms.
I want to thank you both, well, all of you, Tim and Sandra and James, for making this a reality. I've had really positive experiences with Montessori, and I'm so heartened by the research that shows that it can be so beneficial for a diverse community like ours. I went to preschool first in Japan and then in Vermont, and used many of the Montessori methods at both. And I really think it had a massive impact on how I approach problem solving as an adult. So obviously, when we talked about Cranberry School, since Christie's here, you know, we have an opportunity when we're building a new building to create something from scratch. And I know that other members of the board share in my dismay at the number of people on the waiting list who are enthusiastic about Montessori but aren't able to be part of it because we don't have enough seats. So as we think about where we might want to put a second location, it seems to me that the new building might be an opportunity for us. Obviously, there's a cost associated with that, and it depends on whether the community of that stakeholder community is interested. But I think it's something we should consider, because I suspect it's probably more cost effective to start from scratch when you're building that kind of a classroom with the needs in mind, rather than trying to retrofit space retroactively. Brenda, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Again, you know, our journey into Montessori is very young. And what we're actually trying to do has not been done. And it's not a frequent model because it's hard. Okay. And we kind of like proof and practice at Norwalk, right? So Brookside is where we're trying to get proof and practice. As James outlined, staffing alone for a Montessori is very difficult. Finding well-trained people who hold Connecticut certification, both as teachers and leaders, the long-term sustainability. You know, we're venturing in a 50-50 model, right? Where part of it is Montessori. You know, where that will go, should it be full Montessori school with no choice, make it a magnet? I think before we start to journey down a second Montessori setting, we've got to get our feet under ourselves and make sure that we have a strong model here. And the really make sure that Montessori is working and working well in Norwalk Public Schools as one of our choice models. So I think that's where we are right now. And so as the SGC is talking, and as the team is talking, Montessori has not been one of the options that has percolated or that people have been naming out as we've been thinking about that. Not at this point, Barbara.
Okay.
Tim, I don't know if you want to add anything in there about the kind of the journey forward for public schools in Montessori.
But no, I think you captured it very well, Brenda, as far as taking a look at really getting the model down in one location at Brookside and making sure that it's well staffed, that it's well equipped, and it's carrying out with the fidelity that you want it to be carried out in. There's many obstacles as you start working with Montessori in the public sector, but I think where it works really well, it's magical, as James has really indicated. And so I think you really want to make sure that you have that kind of fidelity going on in Norwalk Public Schools at Brookside before you want to do any kind of replication.
I do have a question. I'm not sure if it would be Tim or Principal Crouch that would answer. So I'm very glad to hear that the CSDI is undergoing training, because I can't imagine how you would supervise, the school without having someone there that really knows the model or who is dedicated to the model. So in the absence, or until the person is fully trained, who's overseeing the process that has vast knowledge of the program?
Well, Sherelle, hopefully we can, and not hopefully, we will continue the relationship with Tim and Lori. And
Okay.
Lori comes sometimes 3 times a month. And we meet every Monday, and she observes the classrooms. We meet for like maybe a half an hour to 45 minutes at the end of the day, just to review process, to review instructions. She gives me advice on what I need to do to go into the classroom, what to look for. And it's been a tremendous help. So even though I have not received official Montessori training, and hopefully that will take place in the summer, I do plan to attend a training program. At least I have some type of insight from a very knowledgeable person that when I walk in now, I can see the difference from an unstructured environment to one that's supposed to be very in tune with the materials, keeping up with the materials to make sure children are in tune with the sandpaper letters or the pink tower and all these different lessons that take place throughout the day that is not really a traditional classroom. So it's been very, I'm telling you, very supportive from the very beginning. And Tim, he comes and meets with me maybe once a month. And we meet for about 3 hours, Tim?
Yes, usually.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so I have definitely received some extensive training throughout the course of this school year.
Okay. And it wasn't throwing any shade. I just know, I don't know a lot about the program, but I do know that the people who are involved, like I know parents who've put their children in, and I know that like you just don't deviate from her model. So I was just curious to know, like, how do you supervise that, or is it sort of kind of running on its own? So, but it's nice that Tim and I forget the other lady you mentioned, Lori, are available. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sherelle.
Great work. It's really exciting to see and hear we have this type of program growing in Norwalk. This is really great work. I'm excited to see that you're leading this. I look forward to just getting great updates.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doctor.
Diana, are you good? I didn't know if you had a comment.
Well, my comment is I love the Montessori program. My niece is actually in it in Wilton. So my question was actually answered by you before, where we didn't know if we were going to, in the future open a Montessori school per se, or just have it in different schools. But you did answer that, and I'm looking forward to seeing, how we can develop this in Norwalk.
Diana, you have to come to the school one day so I can give you a tour.
I would love to.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate the presentation and the update, and most of all, the hard work and commitment as always, to all of our children, and to watch again that graceful transition into distance learning, and really trying to keep the best of Montessori. So we appreciate that very much. I'm going to move us along to our next presentation, and we have a feature this evening from Brian McMahon High School. And so we're going to be talking a bit about kind of at the other end of the continuum, what it's looking like for high school students in our IB program. And I'll turn it over to Principal Scott Hurwitz.
Thanks, Brenda. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Very well, thank you.
All right, yeah. I mean, these are strange times, and I just, I hope that all of you are doing well, your families are well, and I really, I don't want to miss an opportunity to thank Dr. Myers for the leadership that she's provided. And I think just from working with colleagues of mine in other districts, there's a real sense that Norwalk has hit the nail on the head in a lot of ways. So I'm feeling really good about the work we're doing in this context. So we have actually 3 programs we're going to be presenting on tonight, and we will do our best to keep our timing to 10 to 15 minutes per program, offer you enough information, time for Q&A, so we don't keep everybody here for too long. So the first program we're going to be talking about is the IB career-related program. For the last 2 years, Brian McMahon High School has offered the IB diploma program. But one of the questions that was asked by a student last year, one of our graduating students in the diploma program, was, can I do the Project Lead the Way engineering and the IB diploma? And the unfortunate answer to that question was no, because the diploma requirements, are kind of very prescribed, and she was not able to do both those things. Tom Such, our science department head, has done a really great job of developing Project Lead the Way at McMahon. Not only the engineering, which was our original offering, but our healthcare, computer science is coming in. And when we learned about the IB career-related program, we saw an opportunity to meld 2 programs that we thought were really great, IB and Project Lead the Way, and also bring in our Naval Junior ROTC program, which we have about 100 students in the NJ ROTC currently. So it was an opportunity to kind of take things that were already functioning really well, but combine them with IB philosophy, which we believe in wholeheartedly, and that's why we brought the CP on board. So I'm gonna turn it over to Tom. I'm gonna share my presentation on the IB career-related program.
You want to share, or do you want me to share it so I can flip pages?
Either way, Tom, whatever you go for it.
Let me see if it works. Anything coming through?
Yep.
Yep, you're there. Just hit presentation down at the bottom so you're not in the
Yeah, looking for it.
right side. Little screen with the T.
I'm used to doing it on top.
Bottom. Yep, there you go.
There you go. All right. Good evening, everyone. As Scott mentioned, we're trying to hit a need. I mean, a lot of our kids who are involved in our pathways already are finding the difficulty trying to get into the actual IB program and all that's worth for it. This is an update, so I'm not going to go through every little detail, but I do want to hit the 10,000 foot level and just give you a few brief things on the components of it, because that will also help drive and hopefully help you understand what we've been doing for the last year or so. The process of authorization takes about, on the short side, 18 months, on the long side, as long as it takes. So we're right now at about that 18-month period right now. So in general, I think we're all familiar with the IB program. The CP is based on 3 major elements, 3 major components. The first one is the actual academic courses. We've had the diploma program for a few years, been running those courses. We've been adding to our collection of courses. An IB diploma student will take 6 courses, 1 in each specific category, which Nicole and Scott will talk about a little later on, I'm sure. But for the CP program, they only take 2 courses, but the caveat there is that those courses are related to their program of study or their choice of career opportunity. So for instance, a medical kid who wants to get into medicine at some level might take our IB biology or IB sports health physiology course. So it gives them a little more ownership of what they're actually taking going towards that pathway. So they'll take 2 courses starting their junior year. CP and DP are both junior and senior year programs. However, with the CP, what we're finding is a lot of our kids are getting into our pathways literally when they walk in the door as 9th graders. So one element, academic courses. Second element is what's called the core. And the core is very familiar in IB language. It kind of is the what binds it all together. So there, in the core for the CP program, there are 4 components for that. One is an actual course. It's an additional course. It's not a diploma course. It's very specific for them as in the CP, and it's personal and professional skills. And it's just kind of the, touches upon what's necessary for them to be successful in a college or career opportunity. It is a course that spans over 2 years, but we offer it in the second half of the first year and the first half of the second year. So it's kind of very similar to in our diploma program. We have what's called a theory of knowledge, same aspect of that.
Tom, if I could jump in for 1 second, I just, to kind of draw a distinction between the diploma program and the CP. The diploma program is like a classic liberal arts education. You're delving into a bunch of different subjects, a little bit of everything. The CP allows a student to specialize, and it was originally designed for more like trades kind of courses, but the way it developed because of who was taking it is that it kind of fell into these natural pathways like Project Lead the Way Engineering, like Project Lead the Way Healthcare, and it allows students to specialize. So the personal and professional skills is this course that kind of, you might sound like a business course, but it really is more specific of, what are the professional and personal skills that you would need to be successful in this kind of career or an area of study.
Perfect. Again, be very, very specific. If they're worried about medical, they're actually talking about terminology. You're talking about PPE, as we all know about that nowadays. But that will be a course they take. Another component is called service learning. It's not community service, it's service learning. They have to identify a project, a need in the community that they can actually help address and make better for whatever that cause might be. Perfect example, in our current healthcare academy, our students organize, plan, set up, and run our blood drives at Brown McMahon. There are adults involved for legality purposes, but in reality is 100% students. And that would be a service learning experience or example of a service learning experience. Everything that our NJRTC group does from all their volunteer work and service work ties into that. Third component of this is the language development. And this is kind of a black eye on IB a little bit, because when they designed this, and they're going to change it up as the years go on, there's no requirement for a language course, although we're trying to recommend our kids constantly take a different language and going forward towards their actual high school diploma. But having a language development, it's a component where they have to take that language and apply it somewhere in their chosen path. For instance, the perfect example, we had a kid who was trying to work in the elementary school, converting a literature or some kind of a book into a different language and then reading it at the elementary school. That would be language development, actually applying and putting stuff towards that. The fourth component of the core is the reflective project. We're all familiar with the term capstone. This is basically a capstone on steroids. All right, it's the same concepts. These kids will develop what they see is going to be their project as they go through this entire process on that. So that's pretty straightforward. There are hour requirements for those. The service learning, language, and reflective each take at minimum 50 hours of contact with the kids. That's built in time with our personal professional skills course. The third element, which I'm very proud of at McMahon, is we have a very, I'll say, depth of career opportunities. My very first slide, if you caught it in the beginning there, says the only source of knowledge is experience. And that's what these programs do. So our engineering program, our medical program, our computer science program, those are all within Project Lead the Way. And then obviously we also talk about NJRTC. These are programs that are driven by the students' interests. And these students' interests show that they want to be involved in these as career and involved in these as college opportunities. So we're really very much impressed with that aspect of it. Can we build upon these going forward? Yes, absolutely. We can start developing different pathways and we can tie into it. The requirement for this is they have to have an outside evaluator. So Project Lead the Way all our kids take what are called EOCs, end of course assessments. And so those EOCs being scored by someone else, those qualified for this. So if we had an outside source, we want to develop a culinary arts program. If we had NCC culinary arts program, verify that our kids are prepared, that would work. So those are the things we're still developing. We're still working towards different possibilities. You might have heard we have a marine studies program going on right now at McMahon. That one's not ready yet. It will be. We will be putting that paperwork in throughout this upcoming school year. So that could be accredited as part of this process as well going forward. So those are just, that's a 10,000 foot level of where we are on this aspect of it. You know, again, these are just the pathways. Our academies certainly fall into this category as well. All right, our healthcare academy is certainly part of this. Like I say, the marine studies one will become part of it probably in 2021, 2022, going forward on that. The reason we came today is we actually want to give an update. All right, as I mentioned, it's an 18-month process. We were here visiting you about a year ago, it was in May last year, and where we were on that authorization process. This chart, obviously, I jacked out off of the internet, but to give you some idea, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but when we saw you last time, we were at this phase here, the third box decision on candidacy by the IB. So we were probably a third into the process. We were getting our feet wet into this. We were just lining up our consultant. And then for the past year, we've been going down this pathway here. So just give you some idea of the breadth of this process. If you're familiar with the accreditation with NEASC from a high school standpoint, very similar, not quite as intense because you're not using as many resources, but it gets pretty deep. And again, the process is not a gotcha mentality. It's helping you as a school, community develop and figure out what's best for you going forward. So this is kind of the meat and potatoes of tonight. All right, what we've done since we met just about a year ago. We continue doing a lot of professional development. You're sending teachers to training, taking online training, also internally working on our own teams. We completed the consultant phase. Now, since we are already a DP school, our consultant was not a face-to-face, but it actually worked out rather well. That I was at a conference where our consultant was presenting, and at a cost of 2 dinners, we spent hours upon hours going over this. So the cost of those 2 dinners was definitely well worth it in my book. Going forward on that. We submitted our request for authorization, and that was a lengthy process. I think somewhere around 120, 125 pages of documentation of what we thought we wanted to run for Bryan McMahon High School and what we were confident that we could run for Bryan McMahon High School. They came back saying that we were set to go for a verification visit, and they gave us a very large window to pick dates. Typical Bryan McMahon, we decided to go as soon as we possibly can. So thankfully we chose February 6th because the other dates were late March and into April. So very pleased that we chose February 6th. And that was a very long day. They came in, we have 2 representatives from International, and they came in and evaluated us. They met with about 15 teams of teachers and students and parents. We had a great representation from board members and central office authority, from superintendent all the way down. But on a personal note, it was great because we actually had the kids go in right before the superintendent and all the downtown folks. So I'm sorry, but you had to follow children, and very hard to follow that process. So they spent the entire day with us, going through every aspect of it. They hammered my staff and they hammered our kids, and it really made us think, what is best for our kids, what is best for Bryan McMahon High School, which was amazing. It was a great process. I was shocked and surprised that they turned around, gave us their report back on February 24th. And again, typical with like accreditation processes, the report back basically in 3 different categories. They give you accommodations, things that you do above and beyond. They give you recommendations. Here are some thoughts about making yourself a better school. And then they give you some other things that are called matters to be addressed. And the matters to be addressed are the items that need to be taken care of before you're authorized. Now, I've done a few accreditations in the past, so every matters to be addressed, I knew exactly what they were before they even came across, but they were things that we wanted them to identify as well, because it gave us a little more ammunition to make sure that we're doing this for the right reasons. So that was actually a well thought out process. So we were in that process of addressing those matters to be addressed, and all of a sudden, now we're on remote learning. So, COVID-19, we're sitting here and trying to deal with these things to be addressed. So, as one of my colleagues says, it may be an ugly baby, but it's our baby. So, kudos to our entire McMahon team for jumping in on this, and a lot of late nights doing Zoom conferences and doing reports and going back and forth. But we were able to address those matters to be addressed. We were able to upload all those into that, simultaneously finalizing our first cohort of students. And so to get a student into this process, we do a lengthy process of, we want to have an interview with them, and we would do those in person, but we've done a couple on Zoom since that point. We go through what their program of study will be involved in and so on and so forth. And kind of to shorten this up a little bit, but I want to just jump to the next slide. This was one of our accommodations from them. I remember I said the accommodations, recommendations, and matters to be addressed. One of the things we really want to focus on is that, and it's one of the biggest problems IB has internationally. It's not just regional United States, not just the United States, but internationally, IB is meant for everyone. And trying to get that across has been very difficult for a lot of schools. This just represents where we are with our first cohort. So just looking at the diversity of what we have involved in our pathways right now, this definitely represents it right there, which was, they were very impressed with it. They actually want to see, further conversations afterwards. How are we doing this? And how did this happen? Because it's a difficult problem for a lot of schools all over the world. So on that. So it was nice to have that from that. And even from that, I keep mentioning our marine biology path, marine science pathway, very similar numbers on that as well. So end of the day, long story short, while we're sitting here in quarantine and we're sitting here in remote learning, we did receive a letter from IB International on April 16th. So we are now officially an IB World School for our CP program.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Kudos to everyone.
Congratulations, yay.
It was definitely team effort. So that's where we're at. Are we slowing down? Absolutely not. Right now, literally, we're in the middle of trying to schedule to figure out how do we get our kids to, because not only have to worry about the IB classes, we've got to worry about those career-related classes that those kids are scheduled that way. So I just sent off a very complicated Excel sheet to Barbara Wood about an hour ago, and I'm sure the conversation is going to continue on that. So that's it in a nutshell. Questions, concerns, comments? Scott, any other additional?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that really came out when the visiting team came in February, and it's something that they were impressed with in the district, is the level of support from central office, from the board, in terms of, I think sometimes, IB is not a cheap program to run. Sometimes people try to do it on the cheap, and what gets sacrificed is training. And when you don't train people properly, it's the program isn't run properly. So they were impressed with the way that we've been able to do that, and the level of autonomy that we have at the school, and just really the level of support from the board and from central office. And I think that has always been the thing that's made it work at Brown McMahon High School.
Wow, no questions, no comments. I like that. Oof.
It's so intricate, but congratulations on all of the work that you're doing and your successes.
Thanks, Sherelle.
Thank you.
It looks like a really intricate program, and the fact that you can pull it off online is admirable.
Well, we're not offering it to students yet. It's really in the authorization phase.
Okay.
But it's getting, like, there were, between the visit and being officially authorized on April 16th.
Just now, right? Okay.
And Tom and his team, were able to hammer that out, which I think is evidence of commitment for sure.
So I guess I misunderstood. So are you planning just, I guess for fall, because we don't know what's going to happen, so to roll it out online? Maybe that's what I was hearing.
No, we'll be offering it in the fall. And
Okay.
if it's, if we have to offer it remotely, we'll make the adjustment and figure it out.
Okay.
And I think nobody knows what the fall's offering, but we're ready to go.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Yeah, it's a cool program. It's a cool
Yeah.
program, and it doesn't detract from the diploma program. It just enhances it because we're just going to fill the ranks of classes and offer another access point.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was very interesting too. I think he said it's specialty. You look at it as a general program and then a specialty program.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Godfrey.
Thanks, Godfrey.
So that brings us to our next piece, which is the middle years program. And one of the things that we have always believed when offering IB is that it's a program for all. And you know, I think what happens sometimes is the most confident students are the first ones to jump at a new program. So, you know, one of the questions we've been asking is how can we grow this program and help students believe that it's truly for everybody? Because it's not, you know, it's not, the adults believe that more kids can and should be taking the IB, can handle the diploma program. So it's a matter of trying to help students see that. So Nicole Stockfish, who's here with us, she's our IB diploma program coordinator. And Dr. Myers and I really started a conversation with some others. Tom was in there as well to talk about something called the middle years program. The middle years program in a K-12 school runs from grades, is it what, 6 through 10, I think, correct, Nicole?
Correct.
6 through 10, but because we're a high school, you know, the question was asked, you know, Brenda down in New Orleans last year at the conference was kind of asking around, and the question was asked, could we run the middle years program just for grades 9 and 10 at Bryant McMahon High School? And the answer was yes. And we really looked at it and said, well, if we start the middle years program, there's a way that we can introduce students to IB the day they step foot in the building, because the diploma program and the CP are both for 11th and 12th graders. So we have this 2-year period of time that they're at Bryant McMahon High School, but are not taking an IB class. Middle years program will transform the way we run 9th and 10th grade. And what will happen as a result of that is more students will be exposed to IB from the day they step foot in the building, and more students will then jump into the CP or the DP, depending on which is appropriate for them in 11th and 12th grade. And I think, you know, as we talk about the size, the number of students in the program, but also the demographic makeup of the school, and we want to see all of our programs have a similar demographic makeup, and that's one of the things that made us really attracted us to the MYP program. So Nicole is going to, I'm going to turn it over to her. I'm going to share my screen. We have a presentation for you just to kind of talk about
Scott, so that
the MYP, but also to kind of, talk about the MYP.
So, Scott, I'm going to add just one piece while Nicole's bringing her screen up. And just some background for the board. When I first got here, we were talking about the IB journey. We were hoping to build out an early years program, a middle years program, and then that would feed into the high school program. But that was kind of caught up in some of our construction questions and what buildings we were going to be able to renovate. And so the primary years model for IB that would be a feeder into this has been put off for several years. And the problem we were starting to see was if we didn't build more of the incremental skills in our 9th and 10th graders, we weren't going to have enough students to really see IB to be sustainable. So instead of waiting for elementary students to come through, we decided to kind of reverse engineer and to start with our assets at the high school and then to move backwards, so that we're building those skills incrementally so that students can feel that they'll be successful in the IB program. So that's been kind of a shift of circumstance and opportunity.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight. As Scott said, the middle years program is the next step in growing the IB experience at Bryant McMahon High School. And with that, we will offer it for grades 9 and 10. But the neat thing about this is it offers a potential opportunity for a 6 through 8 MYP addition to happen at some point. It's part of the IB Continuum. It lays a great foundation for students who may be interested in the diploma program or the career-related program. What's great about the middle years program is it addresses a wide range of learning styles. It involves students in their learning. It develops students to think and inquire and have those higher level thinking skills. Students are taught why they should know something and how it connects to their other subjects, and then how it relates to the real world, which is an important part of educating students and then sending them on to the next level. The program is modeled here. It's made up of 8 subject groups. We decided at Brian McMahon that we will start rolling it out in 6, which are the English, science, math, history, language acquisition, and physical education. Like the other models for IB, the approaches to teaching, approaches to learning are at the center. The IB learner profile, where we want students to be thinkers, open-minded, risk takers, that's all built into the middle years program and transitions nicely into the diploma program and the career related. International mindedness, global context, all part of this program as well. So it's a nice bridge to what we're already doing at McMahon. Why do we want to do this? Why is it important? Just like Tom mentioned about the career related program, we want to identify problems and seek solutions. We want students to be thinkers, communicators. We want them to problem solve and acquire new information through problem solving, formulate answers to meaningful questions. And then we want them to act on what they're learning, take it and apply it into the real world. And that's the great part about IB, is it wants the students to be able to do that. And through professional development that the teachers attend, it gives them ways to get students to be able to do that.
And just, a really kind of stark thing that happened as a result of all the, the COVID-19 adjustments. AP exams, I'm not sure if you're familiar, are typically a 3-hour exam. This year, they're 45-minute exams. And AP has eliminated from those exams anything that a student can look up online during the exam. It's a 45-minute writing exam. In an IB exam, there is never anything that you can look up online in the exam, because those exams are about what you've learned and an extension of your learning, an application of your learning. So as Nicole, in that previous slide, Nicole, if you just go back for 1 second, please. Inquiry and conceptual understanding, global context, all of those things are baked into the IB approach. And it's our belief, and it's borne out in college, that students who approach academics in that way in high school are better prepared for the really deep thinking that's required in college. So it's one of the reasons that we were really drawn to IB in the first place.
We started the year off completing the MYP application. And then the decision on candidacy was made. We were granted the title of being an MYP candidate school in February. So we are currently in this phase right here. We were assigned a consultant. We have to start doing what's at the bottom, professional development, creating unit plans, getting all of the teachers to understand what the MYP is about and how it's going to impact what they currently do, what we already do, any changes that need to take place. We had a very intricate plan for implementation, but due to the coronavirus, we had to adjust that. I believe you all received that adjusted plan by email, but I can also pull it up.
You have it, Nicole? I have it right here if you want.
Yeah, if you want to pull it up, that's fine.
Okay. You have to stop sharing, I think, yeah.
So because of the coronavirus, we had to adjust our plans. We had planned to start sending teachers to training, working around curriculum this summer, but all the workshops have been moved to online. Everyone's dealing with remote learning. We didn't think it was a smart decision to also ask teachers to do an online class centered around MYP at this time. So we kind of fast forward the plan to the fall. And this should be about a 2 to 3 year process of identifying teachers to take the lead on this, getting one person trained in each subject area, curriculum time in June to look at what we currently do, how that matches up with the MYP model, the work that teachers will need to do in order to roll this out at McMahon. And the idea is next school year, 2021-22, we would start to implement these changes in 9th grade. So fall of 2021, pilot the MYP program at Brian McMahon, continue to train our staff throughout that school year. And then fall of 2022, we would be piloting 9th and 10th grade. During those 2 years, we would also be working with our consultant who would give us feedback on the process, anything that he felt we needed to change or adjust in order to meet the MYP model. He will also come out for a 2-day visit where he would also give us feedback. And then once we feel like we are ready, we submit the application for authorization when another visit would take place, just as Tom went through recently for the CP, to decide if we are ready to fully offer the MYP at McMahon and be an authorized MYP school. So that was it on the process so far. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
I think I can speak for the board that we're excited by this work and appreciate your flexibility working the problem in the middle of a crisis.
Thank you.
Yeah. And, you know, just to kind of reiterate something Nicole said, we were on track to start to roll things out, start with some training this June. And I think the realization was the amount of learning that's going on, certainly by students, but by adults right now in terms of transitioning to a different approach. I think that they would have hit the saturation point very early and it would have been rendered totally ineffective. So in consultation with Dr. Myers, we said, we're gonna push the timeline back a little bit. Not that we're afraid of a challenge, but to be smart about the likelihood of an effective rollout.
That's one of the things I love about Dr. Myers' leadership. It's extremely pragmatic and grateful for that.
That is a true story.
Yes.
May I ask a controversial question?
Sure.
So when all of this was being laid out, and thank you for that screen, you know, that just broke it out by ethnicity, but there was some concern. I believe it was when we were thinking of maybe having Columbus be an IB school, that this program might not work for African American students. Can you speak to that? That's
not a discussion that I was ever a part of, so I'm not sure.
I don't think so. It was a community thing and things that were brought to my attention as a board member. And for me, I personally think, you know, African Americans can do anything anyone else can do. That's my personal thought. But you know, it's out there, so people's, you know, so that's their realities. So, and I'm thinking, what?
Sherelle, I appreciate you bringing it up, right? Because I think one of the things that we are actually doing better than a lot of places in this country who are IB is that we understand it's for all and that we're doing everything we can to ensure that. So if you listen to the Thinking Maps model we talked about today, and if you listen to the Montessori model, those are all very parallel to looking at the IB model. The primary years program, which is an integrated methodology where kids apply their learning and have active learning, right, is very similar to what we're talking about in Montessori and very foundational to the Thinking Maps, because this is what we know 21st century learning looks like, right? So it's to the point that all children that we serve are all going to need to be able to handle complex thinking. They're all going to need to be able to communicate. I think what we're trying to do in Norwalk too is we want to be respectful that families can have choice in their schools. And so there are multiple programs who do a great job, but what we know is when a parent chooses that program, you increase the chance of success.
Of the buy-in,
Right, so having some choices is a good thing for kids and for opportunities. It's like our dual language school, right? Dual language, integrated. But does every child and every family want a dual language? Probably not, but it's still a fabulous education, right? So I think this is kind of core in the Norwalk practices and why IB is really important in that family. We're having great success with IB and what our students are able to do. Does that mean we should mandate it for all high schools? Well, of course not, right? It's you have to be able to invest in it, you have to be able to own it, and then you have to apply it in a meaningful way. So it gives some choice to the programming for our students.
And I think to add to that, just at Brian McMahon, the reason that Tom showed that slide is because we look at the composition of programs and we look at the demographic makeup of the school, and we say, does this program look like the demographic makeup of the school? And when it doesn't, then we ask ourselves the questions, why not, and what can we do to change that? So like one of the things we did this year is we sent both school counselors to IB training, 10th grade counselors, for the purpose of helping them understand what the program is, so that they could identify the hidden gems, the kids who maybe weren't inclined to take the leap themselves. So, and I say, not that was the 100% solution, but it's, it is a conscious, kind of intentional conversation on the part of the people at McMahon to look at that. So, and to get it to where it does look like the demographic makeup of the school.
Now, I really appreciate, I was trying hard not to ask the question. I just remembered this from years ago, but I really appreciated that slide. So thank you.
And it's interesting too, if you watch the Brian McMahon journey, and we're going to hear about the next, all of these pieces fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. So you start with an IB, but then you add in the CP, but then you think about the MYP, and then we talk about what does it mean to identify students at risk, and how do you build pathways for all children that they can be successful, right? And so all of these pieces fit together. One solution alone isn't the solution. It's a collection of work that the Brian McMahon High School faculty, staff, and leadership have really been working on.
So let me just ask this question, and maybe it's something we can answer later, I'm not sure. But so what does it look like if you have students that are going into the program that have never had that type of model before versus, you having like the feeder schools, and you have, so what does that look like for the student who's not been privy to that type of education?
So I think when we talk about the middle years program model, we immediately think to the diploma program and the career related program, where it's very prescribed and there's specific classes named a certain way. There's a core that they have to complete. The middle years program is run differently. It's more of a holistic approach. It takes what we already do at Brian McMahon, the way the classes are already set up, the things that they already cover, the curriculum that they already have, and it weaves in the development of skills, which is what we want students to know and be able to do when they leave. It talks about key concepts and related concepts. So units that take place that are around logic or perspective or time, place, and space. Those are things that we're already doing. We're just not naming it. We're not giving it a name. It focuses on personal, social, and emotional development. It's based in reflection. So going back, looking at our work, looking at the process that we went through to complete this. How can we revise it? How can we do better? And then how can we take that and apply it? I think the misconception with IB is it's this AP model on steroids. And that's not what we're going for here. And that's not what's best for kids. And like Scott mentioned, we're very conscious of the fact that we want IB to be what's best for all students at McMahon. And we don't want to put something into our school that's going to hurt kids. We believe that this will give the kids confidence to take the leap, to do the diploma program or the career related. And if they don't want to, that's fine too, but they're still getting the IB experience.
Okay.
And I think to echo what Nicole says, it's baked into their whole philosophy is that this is not a program for the elite. This is a program for all.
Okay.
And it's intentional. So.
And I think that could have been the misconception as to why some comments were made. So thank you for clarifying.
Sure. And happy to answer any questions anytime they come up.
Thank you so much.
Sherelle, it's actually an ongoing issue too, though. We're constantly trying to get away from some of those, preconceptions. Perfect example, when we started with the CP, one of the conversations I had with a fellow from the State Department of Education down in Florida, he asked me, well, what do you think the most successful CP program is in the state of Florida? And I immediately said, well, it must be in engineering or something like that. Nope, our OTC.
Oh, okay.
Now, at that point, now this goes back a couple of years, at that point, if I had to make a list of the top 5 programs I think would be successful for the CP, that would not be one of my top 5.
Okay.
But now, a few years later, as you can tell, that's one of the ones what we would chosen to go forward with at McMahon because it has all the components. So we're excited.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much.
I don't know if this is appropriate or not because I'm relatively new at this, but is it okay if I allow Tom and Nicole to have dinner with their families as we finish up here with RISE?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Awesome
Good
job.
night.
Have a good evening.
Switching gears a little bit, the next program we're going to talk about is called the RISE Network. And RISE is it's a network of schools. It started with 6 schools in Connecticut, and most of them, demographically similar to Brian McMahon High School, diverse schools with, a component of students who are struggling to earn credits and matriculate and graduate. It's funded by the Dalio Foundation, and RISE had kind of been sniffing around Brian McMahon High School for a year or so, and wanted to work with us, but we weren't ready. Like we didn't know enough about the program. We didn't want to just kind of sign on blindly and say, sure, let's do this, because with any program, it's like what they offer is sometimes not exactly what you get. And the same way that we're going to vet a program that we're going to be paying for, we're going to vet a program that's offering to help fund something. So we spent some time talking to the administrators in some of the schools in the first cohort, the first 6 schools, and trying to get an understanding as to what it was RISE was offering and what the expectations were, in terms of a commitment from Norwalk Public Schools, but also from Brian McMahon High School. And eventually we came around to the conclusion that this really was a great partnership with the RISE Network. So we signed on to be one of 6 in the second cohort of schools. And this started, this is our first year with the RISE program. So their mission is to empower educators to achieve breakthrough results, helping all students to realize and achieve their full potential. And here's a list of all the RISE schools, the current RISE schools. So 9 districts, 10 high schools, 14,000 students, 1,200 educators, a really great network of resources and smart people working together to meet the needs of students. Jackie Ahrens is here with me today, by the way, and Jackie can jump in at any point in time. I'm going to turn it over to her eventually.
Yeah, I'll take it over in a couple slides. Yes.
But Jackie, if I miss something, please jump in at any point.
And,
she's our RISE guru. So RISE's key focus is their number one focus is 9th graders being on track. So the data that they look at is 91% of students who are on track during freshman year graduated within 4 years of high school, within 4 years. But only 35% of students who are off track during freshman year graduated within 4 years. And we know that an unfortunate percentage of students who don't graduate in 4 years never wind up graduating. And it's a really key year called the make or break year in some of the literature that RISE has. So to look at students and what RISE has provided, and Jackie will get into this, is a really kind of, I don't know, I think this word is overused, but I'll say it anyway, a robust dashboard of data that starts when students are in 8th grade. So we get to see data on students before they come to us, and we can identify who are the students who, based on criteria established through the research that RISE has done, would appear to be on track to being off track, if that makes any sense. So we are already looking at students before they're coming to us. In fact, we're looking at current 8th graders right now.
I'll jump right in here, Scott.
Yeah,
so, good evening, everybody. Thanks for having us again. The first time that we were here, we were just really excited about the program and all of the really the interventions that we were working with, the tools, and that's really what RISE stands for. It's about resources, it's about innovations, it's about making sure that our systems are strong, and it's also about empowering teachers. So, they claim it, they name it, and then they get behind it and they fund it too. So I feel like, when we talk about these 5 strategies, and I'm really only going to focus on about 3 of them, and this is year 1 for us, and these are the strategies that really have impacted our day-to-day instruction with students and have really impacted students overall. So these are the 5 kind of like backbones to the program that make sure that we provide the freshmen with that foundation to succeed. So as Scott mentioned, there's a risk and opportunity list that every school, they don't realize it, but running behind the scenes is this really powerful data tool that can show us students who are going to need a little bit more, just a little bit more support, just a little bit more encouragement, just a little bit more individualization of their educational program. So those 120 students, and I'll talk about how we kind of organize them, will be identified already. And then we use these 5 strategies to make sure that we usher them from 9th grade to 10th grade. So one of those strategies, which again, these strategies, Brian McMahon has already had kind of in place, but with the RISE, let's say support, we can improve upon these strategies that we already have working. So we have our summer transition plan, which is our summer academy for rising 9th graders. We have our on-track coaching opportunities. So along with, again, those resources, we have 2 hired RISE coaches, we like to call them. And I'll show you them the next slide, that meet with kids. They have a caseload of 60 each, and they are like their coaches. And that's what I like to call them with the kids, because just like we have a coach on a sport team that helps us to learn the game and how to play and hone our skills, these coaches help kids academically in addition to their school counselor. And then we have these on-track data team meetings. So
Jackie, can I just jump in for 1 second?
Go ahead.
Built into this are one-on-one conferences. I don't know if are you talking about the on-track conferences? Is that coming up later or no?
No, it's okay. You can go ahead and mention it.
You're going to get there?
Yeah, but you can mention
No, I'll
it.
stop.
Okay.
Shush.
So one of the, and actually it was a nice segue, Scott, because these are headings, and I'm going through them, but let me tell you, there's so much more to each one. So when we talk about coaching opportunities, this is a building wide strategy. We have teachers, we have RISE professionals, partners that come in. We've invited our instructional specialists, central office, whoever can come, parents, we're getting there, to come in and meet with kids quarterly, to just talk about how the freshman transition year is going. What can we do better? We brainstorm in this, I'll get to that in 1 second. We brainstorm in these data team meetings about what do we really need to know about kids to support what their journey is. How do we hear from kids and improve upon our practices as the adults? So quarterly, we meet with kids and we just kind of like take over the library media center and sit down, and we just have conversation with kids about how it's all going, which has been so impactful because we can parking lot a lot of things that kids say to us, and we can talk about it as a data team. We can also talk about it as a faculty. I bring things back to the administrative team. All the administrators participate. So it becomes very much building wide.
And a shameless plug here. When we invite, please come.
Please come. Please come.
Really amazing. Like, I've participated in them, and I sit down with a freshman who doesn't know me except that I'm a principal who I don't know. And we get into a conversation about what's working and what's going well. And what we've I think just those contact points have been really powerful for kids. So it doesn't matter if you know kids or you're comfortable with it. It's a pretty easy process, and we'll set you up, and you can even get a bag of snacks on your way out.
Exactly. So with our on-track data teams, we meet 2 to 3 times a week. So I have like a team of 16 teachers, reading specialists, all different subject areas, English, math, science, social studies, and we added language in because we know about the coordinating, the data that suggests that students who are proficient in language are very persistent in college. So we've added our language teachers onto our team as well. So my 6-year-old's having a little meltdown. I'm sorry. So at any rate, I'm like, sorry about that.
You are literally every mom in a Zoom conference for the last 6 weeks. You are all of
Going
us.
so well. When I was on mute, it was all good. Going so well. So we meet 2 to 3 times a week, and we follow multiple protocols, and we use these dashboards to look at cohorts of kids. So we not only look at our 120 RISE students, we look at all the 9th grade students, but certainly we use these dashboards and we use these protocols to identify interventions that we can put in place to ensure that students make it from one grade to the next, especially this freshman year. The college and career supports are exactly what they sound like. I work with Ms. Wood, who works with the counselors, and we think about how we can create opportunities for students to really enhance and make that transition to post-secondary life just much easier. So this is year 1. We're working on a bunch of things. We have a lot of ideas, and some of those ideas will be hitting the ground this summer. Fingers crossed about, depending on what our schedule is. And then the last strategy is the educator-inspired innovations. So RISE really gives teachers the opportunity to say, like, if only I had a little money, I could do this with my kids. So basically, they work with basically, it's like the GoFundMe page with teachers.
Donors choose.
Correct. And the teachers can create these grants that they want to use to buy materials or have an experience with their students, and RISE funds those opportunities. And because we're a RISE school, we have the opportunity to do that beyond what is just on the social network platform. Let's go to the next slide. So
if I could jump in, one of the strategies that's not listed here that I think has proven incredibly valuable for me is the networking aspect of it. Every Tuesday from 12 to 1, I meet with all the principals plus RISE personnel to kind of talk about the same things that we're all dealing with. What's our grading policy? How are we dealing with students who are disengaged? What are we doing about summer programs? What are our ideas for graduation? And to have a group of dedicated educators in the room or in the Zoom room, I guess, talk about that has helped to shape our thinking. But Barbara Wood does something of a similar nature for college and career. Jackie is in similar networks. So it's not just the things that are happening in the school, but it's this, the transmission of ideas outside that has been valuable as well.
So when they say educator empowerment, we all have our, there's a whole set of PD that exists. We've involved, of course, Scott has his meetings. I have my meetings. They have 2 partners that are in our buildings on a weekly, if not more than once a week, rotation. We have phone calls, meetings, we have convenings where we come together with the teachers so that there's incredible professional learning, collaboration, and sharing that happens throughout the whole entire program over the course of time. So it's been a very eye-opening experience in just this first year of our participation with the program. This next slide, you see our on-track coordinators, Avery and Sharina, who again, were hired through the RISE program and are living in our building every day. They're in touch with our students every single day. They meet with our kids one-on-one. They call their homes. They make sure they have everything they need. They will communicate with their teachers and really get down in the weeds with kids about what they need to feel supported. They have after school programs. They help coordinate cultural events so that kids start to feel really connected with school. So because we know that that's really the game, that's the game. If we can attract them to high school and keep them engaged between our academics and extracurricular activities, then we have them. And that's one of the things that I'm really, as the data is rolling in, I'm looking at the high attendance rate for these kids. It's really helping having this small, even smaller community working with them. It's helping to keep kids engaged. Even when things are challenging and hard for them, it's still keeping them coming to school every day and attempting to kind of overcome some of the barriers that are in their way. So this slide just kind of goes over some of the things that they do. 120 kids that we have, they each have 60 on their caseload. They meet with these students weekly. They also network with other coaches, including our Fairfield County coaches. We have West Hill that's also a partner. So we talk to each other about what's going on, and we just collaborate about all of the different challenges that kids are facing, and then what types of interventions that we can put in place so that kids can ultimately be successful. That we also mentioned our on-track conferences, which we talked about, and we finally got to the point where we got the entire freshman class. So we went from just our 100 or our initial caseload, and then we added our freshman seminar into it. And then finally we added the entire freshman class, which is such a feat. And we have teacher leaders who coordinate all of these efforts. And it's a lot, but it's such an eye-opening experience. And we've learned so much from the kids on how to improve practice for them. So that has been one of the biggest, I think, successes that we've experienced in a lot of these strategies, really just getting to know the kids on that individual level. So we'll keep going so I can leave time for questions. I'm sorry. And so the data teams, this is where really the rubber meets the road. This is it. We meet, like I said, 2 or 3 times a week. We look at how kids are performing. We look at the barriers that kids are having a hard time with. We look at everything from our grading practices, frequency of assessments, what interventions have we tried, what collaborative efforts can we bring to the table. We've tried so many great strategies this year that the kids really loved. We did this whole books and bev for midterm prep where we, little snack, little hot chocolate, lots of studying, where kids could come and ask a question to a teacher. We had National Honor Society students come in and help prepare kids because our students had never taken midterm exams before. They didn't know what to expect. So we give them everything that they would need, the teachers, the peers, and their own friends to help study and create these study guides and figure out a process to study and a space and a time to study with snacks. So if you want kids to come, you have to bring the snacks. So the data teams, we talk about all of this and we figure out, okay, proactively, what can we do? We've also done work study programs where kids who are falling behind, a certain mark, we get them to come after school. We tutor them with the teachers. We provide snacks so they'll stay. So we do all of those things for kids so that they can get that extra support and understand that that's the way to succeed, that it's hard for everybody. But if you want to overcome that challenge, you need a plan of action so that you can say, okay, when I'm in trouble, here's what I do. My first step is this. My second step is this. Take advantage, ask questions, come in, study, find a different road. So that's kind of our engagement strategy for kids when they start to fall behind. Let's keep going, Scott. And then we have some innovations that, like I already started to mention some of our things like books and bev. We've had clubs and activities fairs because we know, again, the engagement piece is crucial to linking kids in. We want them to understand that school is a whole community. So we have the academic rigor, we have the extracurricular, we do all of it. We have these on-track celebrations where we honor kids that are on track.
Oh, Jackie's computer's been acting funny, so I'll jump in here. On-track celebration, so that's this upper corner right here, where it's not a big deal, but it's enough of a big deal to kind of acknowledge students who have this is one, a kid went from a 1.7 to a 3.29, which is a huge jump.
Oh, wow.
So I think the beautiful thing about it is you take some students who are prone to slipping through the cracks, and we've provided, in a sense, on-track coaches or case managers to support them, to support their families, and really encourage students. And we're still relatively new at it, but in the schools that have been doing it for the first cohort of schools, they see remarkable changes in the number of students on track and the building of culture in kids. We've already seen things happening with our freshman class, which are pretty remarkable too. I think Jackie's probably going to rejoin us at some point, but oh, there she is.
God, I think I need an on-track coordinator in my life. Sounds perfect.
I think I ran into some tech issues.
Oh, your background's working though. Look at that. You're in Norwalk Harbor, Jackie. You here? Jackie, you with us? Not sure what's going on.
Tech issues, she said in the chat box.
Okay. All right, I'll continue. These are innovation and fund engagement at McMahon. So typically, donors choose, it's a 1-for-1. So, you look for an amount of money to support some sort of project that you're doing. Because we're part of a RISE network, Dalio actually matches whatever's raised. So teachers are able to earn money a little bit more quickly than a typical person engaging donors choose. But teachers have raised almost $7,000, and that's the number of projects that teachers have engaged in. And again, I think it's not the most sort of high leverage strategy for RISE, but it is something that allows teachers to to kind of use their own creativity and innovation, and then to have that funded beyond what RISE already provides. Jackie, you back with us?
We'll see for how long. I'll do my best. Can you hear me?
Yeah, your background looks great. Your Norwalk.
Oh, thank you. Little Maritime Center.
That's finally working. That's great.
I kept the other laptop running just in case. So sorry about that. So Scott, you continued, right, with the innovation fund?
I did. I spoke briefly. I don't know if there's a key point that you wanted to hit on, but I was just kind of going over what it's.
No, I just wanted to kind of give an overview of some of the really cool opportunities we had to network with kids over the course of the year and how we spent a lot of our time, and ultimately where we're tracking to. So, right now the numbers are still rolling in, but the things I can tell you right now are, of those 120 students that were really very much at risk, we're really looking at that group, and so that's a large part of the freshman class, and we're really looking at a very small percentage of students who are really still struggling at this point in time. And as a matter of fact, we have almost 13% of those students basically on our honor roll list now. So those are the things that I'm really excited to share, and I know that this very small, intensive intervention culture does create a lot of positives. Some of those positives aren't always measured by the students' grades right now. Like, for example, yes, there's still about 10 or 12% who are still very much struggling, but almost 80% of that 120 are on track. That's amazing. The numbers of their attendance in the 90 percentile range of coming to school, even through challenge. And then again, to see almost 12-13% of those kids on the honors roll list, they've never been there before. So those are the big wins that I'm those wins that we celebrate with kids. And we know that if we continue the consistency of using the interventions and all of the resources, that we can really shorten that gap of kids who are, kind of don't succeed out of that 9th grade year and then think of high school as something that's too much of a challenge for me. And of course, we have all these other programs then once they kind of get over these hurdles that they're more interested in. So I'm excited about all of the things that are happening at Brian McMahon. And this program, I think, is really a nice foundation for freshmen to get that grand welcome in a very small environment because of the team surrounding them. where people are really looking individually about how we can bridge them to, one, having a really successful freshman year and that nice platform so that they feel like, okay, yeah, I'm going to jump into this track or this track. And we're talking about kids that historically have not been succeeding. So we're excited about that. So any questions?
Sounds
I just want to
exciting.
say, I just want to say overall, I was really extremely happy to see the presentation from McMahon this evening, and really reiterated the fact that everything that was presented is what I felt each of the time that I had an opportunity to go into McMahon this year. And I just all around like this, great job. It's really great to see the positive things you guys are doing over there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? This is our final presentation this evening. I appreciate everyone. We've been wanting to tell the story, so put these off for a couple of months. So it's so nice to have everybody together finally.
Yeah.
And I think they're just amazing demonstrations of the kind of work that we're seeing all across Norwalk. So we'll open it up. Is there any board questions for us?
I mean,
go ahead.
Sorry. No, Cheryl, you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Obviously, I'm going to ask the question I ask every time CT Rise comes in front of us, which is, can we try to get it at Norwalk High School as well? And the second, I just wondered, I know that we now have access to the technology that's used by CT Rise, and would love to hear an update of where we're using it, because I know we're allowed to use it within the district as a whole, so where we're leveraging that. And I did want to just ask Jackie about the college and career supports and how we might be leveraging and enhancing those, knowing that our graduates this year and next year are going to come into an extremely difficult economy. How are we connecting them to job opportunities? They may need to be working while they're going for a higher level degree in a way that they maybe didn't have to in the past. All of those questions. Do you have a super size me plan for the problem coming down?
I can answer some of those questions. So the first is that I will say that just recently, as a matter of fact, I want to say within yesterday or today, I was working with Jen Sweeters, who's an AP at Norwalk High, and we were actually going over dashboards. And we were talking about how you might want to use this to identify this, how you can do this to have instructional conversations. So for my small part of the world, I certainly have extended myself in terms of whomever is interested, I can help out. And then Rise will help out as well. As far as the partnership is concerned, I think that's something kind of at Dr. Myers or Ralph's level in terms of how, the partnership is extending beyond the first building. But there are other towns that have 2 high schools in the town that do have the program. But so for now, I can't answer that part of the question, but in terms of the technology, we certainly do talk and we're collaborative, and, I'm certainly able to share information with other administrators or whomever would like the information. And it definitely is so very user-friendly and so very helpful to get into some conversations that really span from how are kids achieving, are kids on track for graduation, are kids, moving in the right direction. So there's so many dashboards.
Just to kind of add to that, the data doesn't stop at freshmen. We had a conversation recently at one of our Rise meetings to look, and we were talking about, how many students are tracking to be somewhere between 50 and 59 average at the end of the school year. And what can we do to intervene at this point so that those students who are so close to passing a class for the year, not only freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, what can we do to intervene at this point to get those students over the hump and have fewer kids going to summer school and have fewer kids off track? So, and the beautiful thing about the Rise Network is it's not just the on-track coordinators and the networking with the other educators, but we have a data person who works with us, and it's not one person for the school. I think they share a couple of schools, but they can create data reports outside of what we can do through Power School for really any kind of set of criteria that we're looking for.
Give an example that was so powerful the other day. As we've been talking about summer school and summer academy and supporting all of our children over this summer, we want to really focus on our 8th to 9th grade transition and using the resources of the RISE network and our partnership with Carver and some local money from CARES Act. And what Jackie was so wonderful in offering is, we have a set of criteria that is used to identify at-risk students coming from 8th to 9th grade. And how can we build a partnership? And we can do that for Norwalk High School as well as for Brian McMahon, so that we're capitalizing on that wonderful data set, but also the research behind what we should be looking for. And then Jackie's been doing a beautiful time designing out what would a good innovative program look like, where kids want to come, who want to be a part, that'll give them a leg up. So all of that collaboration is really so powerful that RISE is kind of filtering in. We continue to ask when there's these windows of opening for schools to come on board. It's how Brian McMahon came in, and we are ready for the next window when there's an opportunity to make our request for Norwalk High School to be a part of RISE as well.
And there was discussion of the middle schools using the data dashboard. Is that happening?
Well, right now we're using it at the 8th grade. So we're using it for the 8th grade transition to 9th grade. And that was like one of the planning pieces. We've not taken it down any lower yet. But again, under COVID, we haven't had much time to kind of explore that in the last 2 months.
But when I reflect upon the results of the climate survey and the drastic shift that happens from 5th to 6th, or halfway through 6th somewhere, there's a breakdown. If we could start tracking what's happening using this resource, it could help explain and lead us to an action plan as to how not to be in that situation. Like help us work. So exciting with Sandra's work with Panorama, because we're going to have a much richer data set now that we can interface, as you said, into that dashboard. Yep. Okay.
And we're actually looking at what other things can we have Panorama feed into. So not just necessarily feeding into Panorama, but having Panorama maybe feed into RISE, or having Panorama interface with PowerSchool. So really trying to get our systems talking to one another.
Right. And that's a whole other, like Sandra probably can, there's a whole other thing about data that, because the dashboards work off of PowerSchool. So that data is only as good as whatever is produced in PowerSchool. So when all these systems start talking to each other, it can get very complicated, and we've learned that too, so, and that helps you tighten your systems up. So when I think about RISE and it's about systems, it helps you tighten up your systems, because if you don't have protocols, the data is only, that good. You need good systems.
Just remember that PowerSchool is the motherboard.
That's it.
Okay, that's what we have to preserve.
And are we still happy with PowerSchool? Is it still the best tool available?
That I can't answer, Barbara. Probably Ralph. That's a question better suited for Ralph.
Okay.
Well, it's a question of how much time and energy you have into building in an entire new student management system. It's an enormous task, and it's a very complex system implementation. So we've learned how to retrofit PowerSchool to our needs right now, and that's probably the best place for us.
Okay, great.
Scott, you're on mute.
Scott, we can't hear you.
I was just saying, Jan and Jean have done a lot of really good work to figure out the intricacies of PowerSchool, which it takes a while to do. So I would not advocate switching at any point soon, because I think we're finally at a point where we're things are feeling
They're
proficient.
speaking the same language. And yes, as like sometimes I'm leaving my RISE meeting and Kathy and Jean are going in. So I mean, it involves all levels of NPS to make this all happen.
Great. Sherelle?
No questions. It sounds all very nice and exciting. And Jacqueline, I can just feel your energy over here. It sounds like you're like super, super, super excited about this. So
I like data.
yeah, I can tell, it shows. So thank everyone for your work. I'll have to get over to Brian McMahon. I haven't been there since my child graduated. So hopefully whenever this pandemic releases, I know you have Dr. Allen over there who's also very wonderful.
Yes,
So,
and she's been involved with this freshman class as well.
Yep. So I don't know, Diana, anyone else have any questions?
No, I'm all good. Thank you.
Okay.
We do need to approve the minutes, which was the beginning of the agenda, but we didn't do it.
We did not. All right, so anybody want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second,
Aye.
all in favor?
Wait. Discussion.
Discussion, oh, sorry.
Sorry, there's two edits. One, my name should be hyphenated, Laura, and the second, page 4, paragraph 2, there's a sentence that just says she said. That should probably just be struck. And I think that everything else was really good. It's always good when there are not a lot of
Anyone else? Diana, Godfrey?
Nope.
Nothing else.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion to adjourn? Barbara? Anybody second?
I'll second.
Diana? Okay, all in favor, so moved. I guess I don't think we need to
Ooh.
have anything.
Thank you to everybody. Thanks for the night.
Thank you.
Appreciate you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
It was nice to have some FaceTime with some people we don't get to see very often.
Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Barbara, how's your daughter?
It's so nice of you to ask. She's had a fever the last 3 days, so I'm hovering a little. But tomorrow's her 14th birthday. So
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
thanks. We're
Make sure you
looking
take care of
forward.
her, okay?
We are. Lots of fluids, lots of rest.